Okay, I think it's recording. It says gives the option of stop recording. Oh, yes, it is. I mean, it's recording. It's recording. Cool. We're good. We're live. Awesome. I'm not gay. I'll edit this part out, but I think the reason I'm able to do such a good accent is because back in high school there was a point in time where most of my friends were. And it got to the point where like, hey guys, what's up? And they're like, shut up. So I think that was what that was. I actually pulled the wool over one of my dad's friend's eyes, and she thought because I was talking normal, and then all of a sudden I just started pulling this out of my hat, and and I walk away, and she goes like, "Is he gay?" And he goes, "He's screwing with me."
He's screwing with you. Don't worry about it.
Pretty much. Okay, so hey guys, this is Wildman here, and I'm joined again by my buddy Dragonfist, and I have to apologize for our last stream because I didn't know what I was doing, and it says that when you go to the video, it says an hour and 15 minutes, but when you click on it, it's only 12 minutes. Guys, I am so sorry. But you're not missing much because it quickly devolved into just mindless banter about fan fiction. So you're not missing much.
it was really weird because I mean we were talking about the movie and we didn't even get 9 minutes into it.
No.
But it's weird though because here we are talking about this stuff and then all of a sudden it just because Wildman and I had the video up on our phones so that way we could monitor the chat to see if anyone had any questions or comments. And so we thought the video was going fine, but then something weird happened with. I mean, this is how I found out about it. Something weird happened with my phone, like the YouTube app crashed or something like that. And so I went back into it, and the next thing I know, it was only showing it showed that we were offline. And then the next day I opened it up again, went over to Wildman's channel, and it was only there was one that had 12 minutes and then there was one that had an hour. And then the next day it was like there was only the 12-minute one. I'm like, YouTube, pick one video and stick with it.
Yeah, we don't know what happened.
although I do have something really, really funny to say about it, if you don't mind, before
Go
into
ahead.
the video.
Go ahead.
All right. So first of all, for those of you guys who didn't hear, or for the video that the video cut off before we actually got into the discussion. We only got through the first 9 minutes of the movie, and then the conversation just evolved into talking about a bunch more things. At least to us, anyway. Like fan fiction and whatnot.
Yeah.
But that was mainly because the movie is so boring that there's nothing worth of substance in it.
Yeah,
really.
One thing I noticed in the movie is that it has this weird obsession with slow-mos and close-ups of Bree's face.
Yeah.
I noticed that at the 9-minute mark. I had to stop and how far are we in this movie?
but I have a reason for why YouTube stopped the video though.
Oh, this is good.
YouTube was so bored. It didn't want us talking about the movie. The site itself did not want us to talk about the movie because it knew how boring and decrepit it was. And so because of that, it fell asleep and caused the video to stop midstream. That's the in-universe explanation for what happened if this was an anime.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we actually decided to talk about something fun. And it's going to be Wolverine, baby. We're talking about Hugh Jackman Wolverine. And because I tweeted out a few not too long ago, I'm gonna get in shape and cosplay as Wolverine. And I did it as part of like, I don't know if I'll actually be able to do it, but this is a good motivation for me and to have friends help me out with that. So I am hoping to do it. So and then a friend of mine was like, which version of Wolverine? And I'm like, Hugh Jackman, man. Is there any contest? Although Steve Bloom as Wolverine for the voice is pretty good.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start this out and just like have fun with it. Uh, so I'll wait and I'll let Dragonfist go first. So, what was your history like with Wolverine? Like,
Well,
yeah,
go on ahead. Sorry.
no, like, what was your history like? What was the first movie you saw? What drew you to the character?
Well, my first exposure to Wolverine was actually this is gonna sound embarrassing, but my first exposure to Wolverine was actually X-Men.
X-Men Origins.
Yeah, X-Men Origins Wolverine. When I was in high school, I had a teacher who would put movies on in study skills class, and so basically in my study skills class, because it's a study skills class, you're not really supposed to you don't have any classwork there per se, so it's really just a matter of goofing off, if you will. But basically, what happened was there was one day when he put well, actually, he started with the Wolverine, and then he went into X-Men Origins Wolverine. The problem is, because it was my first time with the character, I didn't really pay much attention to the Wolverine, and instead I paid more attention to X-Men Origins Wolverine, because that's what kind of drew my attention at the time.
Well, despite everyone saying that that movie was garbage, which I don't think it's as bad as the reputation it has, but first off, without that movie, we wouldn't have the Deadpool we all know and love right now. So, but
yeah, and plus I don't think we would have what came after either.
yeah, so it's really my biggest problem with that movie is the inconsistencies with Sabretooth. Like, we had a good Sabretooth with the original X-Men movie. Why couldn't we have had him? So, because you see the comic books of the Sabretooth, and you try to imagine what this guy would look like in real life. They got it down in the original movie.
Well, I think the problem was that, okay, well, this is like long in retrospect, but I actually looked into the history of the franchise, and apparently what happened was Bryan Singer, the director of the original two, was supposed to direct number 3, but what happened was there was some studio meddling or something like that, and he jumped ship to work on Superman Returns, for all the good it did that movie. And so he did Superman Returns, and then they thought he was going to come back and direct Origins, which I did. It was a much more faithful adaptation of it, of the Weapon X storyline. But he didn't, and so because of that, they brought in this other guy, and there was also a lot of studio meddling by one of the main producers, who basically thought that he was one of those older guys who basically thought that comics were for
kids.
Yeah, were for kids, or one of those really demeaning, patronizing type of guys.
Have you not heard? Did he not hear of the term man-child?
Yeah. But I mean, he was just one of those guys, and he was sabotaging the production. Apparently, and get this, apparently the decision to sew Deadpool's mouth shut in that movie was actually a mandate from this guy.
Oh, wow.
And like, okay, here's a guy that clearly doesn't get the character at all, and clearly should not be involved in a production like this.
Yeah,
but because he was one of the higher ups, he was there, and they couldn't really do anything.
Oh wow.
Until later.
Like, I can kind of get the sewing of the mouth a little bit, because, like, he's called the Merc with the mouth. Oh, wait, he won't shut up. How do we solve that? Sew it up.
Well,
I can kind of
the
get
other
it in
thing
that
too
sense,
is,
but it defeats the purpose.
well, I mean, the other thing too is, I mean, if you read the Deadpool comic, like swearing up and down and dropping F-bombs.
Yeah, that's true.
And Wolverine Origins, from what I remember, had a PG-13 rating.
Yes.
And basically, so if you were to unsew his mouth, you would have to water the character down substantially from the comics version.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know how. Well, I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done. It can be done, obviously.
They did it with cartoons and stuff for like, and all that. So it can be done, but it was back then. Deadpool was such a weird character that they didn't know how to adapt him to the live screen.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that without this movie, we wouldn't have the Deadpool movies. So I think that's a big part of it. Although I will say this is the one movie that I absolutely hated Wolverine's hair.
Why is that?
Because it just didn't look like Wolverine. Like, okay, I'll get into this later, but I think the best hair Wolverine had in the movies was the Wolverine when he's in Japan. Because in the comics, it looks like a horn, like a crown or horns or whatever, right? Like an animal mane. In real life, the way they did the hair in that movie, it looks true and faithful to what the character's hair is supposed to look like, while looking like an actual real world haircut.
Yeah, well, plus, I mean, I don't remember who directed the movie. I think it was James Mangold who directed the Wolverine. Oh yeah,
that hair.
Yeah. But I know that he was supposed to do a Wolverine trilogy, which when you take the Wolverine and then later on Logan is kind of the final piece of that trilogy. So I don't remember if he directed X-Men Origins. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I don't know. I was 10 when Hugh Jackman played Wolverine for the first time. I was 10, and I was so excited. Because I remember, because at the time I vaguely remembered some of the comics and the cartoon, but I was so young because the 90s were my first decade of life. And so it's like, I don't remember a lot of it, but I remembered it. So it was so cool, because like, so guy with metal bones with claws, right? That's gonna be awesome no matter what. And then he takes what on concept most people at the time would consider a lame superpower and makes it awesome. So like the healing, that's amazing. But a lot of it, and they in the first couple of movies they used this, but over time they apparently acted like they forgot he had it. Not only is he heals, he has animal equivalent senses of smell, sight, and hearing. Because when you get down to it, Wolverine is a hunter. So it was I remember when we first get introduced to Wolverine in that cage fighter bar scene, and then he gets beat up, he's fine, and then he goes to get a drink, and the guy that he beat up is all black and bruised, and like he goes to stab him, and then all of a sudden the claws come out, and he's got the guy pinned right between his two claws, and then the third claw is starting to come up ever so closely to his throat, and like Rogue is just sitting there all shocked, right?
I mean, one thing you can't deny, from the very first frame, Jackman nailed it.
Yes.
He knocked it out of the park.
Yes. And he only got more and more buff as the movies went on. Because you listen to interviews, and he said he had a vision of what this character is supposed to look like. But when they cast him, he didn't have enough time to get in shape. I think he said he only had 2 or 3 weeks, and he got in that good a shape in 3 weeks.
Well, because the other thing too is, I mean, Jackman's casting was pretty much last minute because originally it would be a Scottish guy. I think it was supposed to be a Scottish man that was supposed to play him, but sorry, but what ended up happening was the Scottish actor wasn't available, and so but Hugh came in second place, in terms of auditioning, and so they went back to him. But by the time they did, there was already a start date for the movie. They just, they didn't cast Wolverine yet, obviously.
And the interesting part is, you listen to that, Wolverine didn't even know Wolverines were a real animal.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
Because you would think you would know.
Because he...
being out in nature, since he likes being out in nature.
He came in acting like a werewolf, or like a wolf on all fours, to the audition, and the director's like, I love what you're doing, but what are you doing? He's like, well, he's an animal, he's like a wolf or whatever. He's like, he's a Wolverine. Wolverines aren't real. Yeah, they are, and it's metaphorical. He's a metaphorical animal.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my kind of introduction to the character there.
Okay.
Was through Origins.
What did I write? Well, okay. What did you identify with the character? What did you like about Wolverine? Like, what did you identify most with and latch on to?
Well, okay, this is gonna be fast forwarding a little bit to the Wolverine and then to Logan. Okay. But basically, I first saw the Wolverine, like I said, I wasn't getting to the theater that much, then, just because I was focused on my studying and stuff like that, and I still am to a degree. Mm-hmm. It's just obviously thanks to the lockdown, no theaters.
Yeah.
But basically, what happened was I first saw the Wolverine when I was in high school, and what I immediately identified with was how cool he was. Because if you think about it, oh my gosh, well, and a little bit of Days of Future Past too. I watched Days of Future Past. Yes. I actually saw that one in the theater before I saw Logan, and what there's actually a funny story based around that I'll tell once I'm done with Days of Future Past. But basically, what I kind of liked about it was, Days of Future Past, first of all, what I loved about it was how calm, cool, and collected he was in pretty much any given situation.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this is a guy who, this kind of goes back to, this kind of goes into Bond territory. Yeah. It kind of, those Bond films where he never looks like he's in any danger. He never looks like he's in any danger whatsoever. He's just going through the motions and handling it.
Yeah.
That's how Wolverine was to me in Days of Future Past. He was just like, step aside, boys, I got this. Stuff like, stuff like that. Pop in the bone claws. Stuff like that. But he was just so calm, cool, and collected throughout the whole thing. Well, with the exception of the final battle, just because he was thrown into that lake.
That's pretty much the only way you can kill him is by drowning him, essentially, almost.
Yeah.
He heals everything else.
Well, basically. Or you can also use carbonadium. Deadpool did that to kill in that one-off comic.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was Days of Future Past, and then Logan. Oh my gosh!
He was tired. Like, I don't know if Hugh Jackman was tired, but Wolverine was tired.
Well, if you look up interviews with Jackman around the time, he did say that his increasing age, around the time was making it harder and harder for him to get as buff as he was.
Yeah.
So he toned it down substantially for Logan. Like, okay, if you compare the topless scene in Logan to the topless scene in Days of Future Past, it's like no contest.
Yeah.
It's no contest.
Well, the interesting. Good.
Oh no, go ahead.
The interesting thing about like, I do remember him saying like he was getting tired because he was pushing 50 at the time. And the older you get, the harder it is to pack on muscle like that. And he would deadlift weight so heavy that would bend the bar the weights are on. And so yeah, and he was also talking about like he had to motivate himself to eat the right amount to get to sustain it, like because it was work. So I get that the older you get, that's gonna wear on you, and you don't want to do it anymore. And but the point with Logan was like the actor and the character were both tired. Like Wolverine at that point had been around for a few hundred years, and he was at that point he wanted to die. He like his healing power was fading, and like you actually get to see it work less and less throughout the movie, so that's kind of cool. And that you actually get to see it's not told, but you got to put the pieces together in your head that he was he was constantly drinking, right? And it was because he was in so much pain. The character was, so it was the only thing he could do to like make him to get his mind off the physical pain.
But like, so funny story about Logan actually. So I went to see it in the theater. What?
Did you cry at the end? I cried at
Well,
the end.
actually, I was going to, but I actually wasn't able to. Well, for a reason I'll get into in a minute. So basically, I went to see it in the theater, and there were okay. So if you see the movie, Logan is kind of a film that you have to have seen at least a few of the other ones to really see how big of a deal it is when he dies at the end, because this is a guy who, and an actor who you've seen in pretty much every single movie for the past 17 years.
He's played it for 17 years.
And, when he finally dies at the end, it's such a gut punch because you never thought that would actually happen on screen. I mean, yeah, you've seen him get beaten up and bruised, but you never thought that he would actually die.
Yeah.
And in such a brutal way. And I was going to cry, but if you've seen the movie, you know that it has a lot of emotional scenes. There were a lot of emotional and powerful scenes, and I was trying to enjoy those. The problem, behind me in the theater were a bunch of elementary schoolers.
Oh no.
There were a bunch of elementary schoolers who were basically, well, I don't know if they were elementary school age, but they were like clearly not in the R-rated demographic.
Yeah. No.
And every time a fight scene would come up, and and I mean those emotional scenes would come after a massive fight scene. And so those guys would basically be yelling and screaming. They were literally yelling, screaming in the theater during because they were like, oh, get him, hit him, stuff like that.
Wow.
And the problem is, I'm sitting here trying to enjoy this emotional moment, and yet I have these constant interruptions behind me. I'm not able to enjoy that.
Yeah.
And I was this close to actually walking out of that auditorium and going into another one. I was this close to doing it.
I actually remember having a very similar experience in X-Men 2. Way back when, back in the day. Except it wasn't a bunch of kids, it was an old guy.
Well, okay then.
I know, talk about bizarre.
Yeah.
the interesting thing with Logan is you watch the movie and you see I don't remember the girl's name that they cast as Laura, but my gosh, did they do a good job? Like she looks like she with the facial expressions and all that, she looked like Wolverine's kid, and like Wolverine was not a good dad.
Yeah.
Like you could see that she just wanted him to love her, and like he didn't really want to have anything to do, but until towards near the end. But the thing is, like that scene where like the clone of Wolverine starts to take her, and he finds out that it killed Charles, and then he goes and starts to try to beat him up, and then like he's like he gets beat up instead, and then he picks up Laura. Like, don't you think you would have some kind of parental instinct of some kind, not that would like maybe not parental, but like responsible? Like, she's a kid, I gotta help.
Well, I mean, if you notice throughout Logan, that Xavier is constantly telling Wolverine, Logan, she's like you, very much like you.
Yeah.
You have to protect her, stuff like that. Although one thing I kind of identified with, not really in Logan, but in but in Days of Future Past, was well, okay. So Days of Future Past is obviously based on the Days of Future Past storyline. It's obviously based on that storyline from the comics. And in that comic storyline and in the movie, they try to go back to the past and try to change something to prevent the future. And something that I identified with was, in a way, was wanting to, if I could, wanting to go back and change something that I'd done in the past in order to affect my future.
Yeah.
But, I mean, no matter how much you want to turn back the clock.
Yeah, it's always, it's one of those, the whole point of the whole movie is like, if you could go back and change something, would you, and what would it be? And we'd all have moments like that, but we don't have a time machine. I'm going to go back to Logan for a second, because it's one of the things I don't think a lot of people realize. But the movie is vastly different from the comic. Like, vastly. In the comic, Wolverine is married and has 2 kids, and he will not bring out his claws. And the all the heroes are dead except for Wolverine. And that all of the United States are divided into territories with of the villains. And the Hulk is a villain, and he runs Wolverine's territory. So
it's messed up what they do with the Hulk. It's messed up.
We're not even going to get into that.
That's
all we'll say. But like, basically, like, long story short, Hawkeye gets Wolverine on a mission to like we can make new Captain Americas and fix this. Only to find out, no, it was a trap for a crazy, insane Red Skull. So Wolverine escapes. I think Hawkeye dies. I don't remember. But Wolverine escapes only to come back and find his family dead. And that's when the claws finally come out. And he goes and beats up the whole Hulk clan.
He massacres that entire family.
And then
massacres that entire family. It's glorious.
Hulk eats him. He eats him. And then, but only for him to claw his way out. And then he kills everybody except for little baby Hulk. And he's like, I can raise him to be better. And it ends. So it's vastly different from the movie. And it's good.
Yeah, that storyline and Logan are like 2 completely different, well, for lack of a better term, animals.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because for one thing, I don't think it's possible to have done the Old Man Logan storyline justice unless he was allowed to be in the MCU when that movie was made.
Yeah.
Um,
The only way is they would have to build up to it like they did Avengers, and there's no way they
because
could have done it.
Jackman went on record and he said that so prior to Logan being made, he said that what he always dreamed of was being able to be in the MCU, and fight alongside Hulk or Iron Man or Captain America.
He can
And
still do it. But
but I feel like in order to do that though, I feel like they'd be better off casting him as like old man Logan.
That's really the only way they could do it.
Well, just because because the guy's over 50 now.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if they cast him as Old Man Logan, it would obviously be a lot more. That role would obviously be, it would be less not really damaging to his health, but it would be a lot less intense.
Yeah, it would. It would be easier on Hugh Jackman to get in the shape for the role too, because like basically all you would have to do is like loosely, because like they're owned by different rights and companies now. Like this could take place in between, take place before Logan, so he could be
technically
he wouldn't be as sick. He would be old, but not as sickly.
Yeah, like maybe it would be like, I don't know, before the adamantium poisoning really started.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
And by the way, did you see?
Which is weird.
Good.
Which is weird because there's a fan theory going around, and I don't remember if this was stated in the movie, but apparently, actually I think it might have been stated, I just don't remember where. But basically, in the movie, the reason why mutants have been dying out, or less and less mutants have been born, is because, well, for one thing, the government is exterminating them when they're born. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, they're also poisoning the food supply, and so basically, they're putting this X killer gene or something like that in the food, and so basically, more and more people don't have the gene, and so because of that. That's why.
Yeah.
I think that might be another reason why Wolverine, adamantium is slowly killing him.
Well,
in the movie,
there was two theories that I heard that I kind of liked. Well, Matt Pat's theory was like, oh, it wasn't his actual adamantium poisoning. It was literally his genes just growing old. It just, because it's Wolverine, it took way longer, which makes sense because he heals. He's not immortal. He heals, which prolongs it. So
right, he's not like Deadpool. He's not like Deadpool, who can literally regrow limbs.
Much is immortal. But another one I heard, and it kind of makes sense, is at the end of the Wolverine, when they break off his metal claws and try to suck out his healing factor, that is what they sucked out enough of the healing factor to where he actually started to age.
Yeah.
Again, that makes sense.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, because it's interesting because obviously with Disney now owning the X-Men, with them now owning the X-Men now because they bought out Fox.
Yeah.
There's always that there's always that, this is actually getting into the fourth part here, but I'd hate to skip ahead on this, but basically there's always that question of, well, what if Disney owned Fox, or Fox had given them back the rights before Logan was made? What could we have had? We could have had a Hulk versus Wolverine movie or something like that. I mean, that's a ticket seller right there.
That would have been amazing.
Ticket seller right there.
But Hugh Jackman versus the Hulk, man. Oh my gosh.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah. No, what I want to see, and they'll never do it now. So I'll talk about both of these because it would be what we want spiritually. What everyone wants to see, a Wolverine and Deadpool crossover. I'm all for it.
I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be awesome, especially considering they're friends in real life. But we'll never get that. So I propose that they do a buddy cop movie instead.
A buddy cop.
Like, in the style, like, okay, you know what? Go for it. Remake Lethal Weapon with Hugh Jackman as the older, by the rules cop, and
Remake Lethal Weapon.
and Hugh Jackman Ryan Reynolds as the Mel Gibson character, the crazy, insane, I do it my way kind of thing. That would be amazing.
That
Like,
would be
comment,
awesome.
and subscribe if you agree. No, but we want Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yes.
How did we feel about his journey throughout the movies?
Well, in terms of like the original trilogy, like the first three, I thought they had a really good thing going with him for 1 and 2, but then by the third one, it kind of, because the third one obviously adapted the Phoenix, and obviously adapted the Dark Phoenix saga.
They tried that twice, and it never worked.
It never worked.
The Phoenix is so weird, because, granted, I will perfectly say I'm not an expert on the Phoenix saga, or whatever, but I do know it's such a weird character and storyline that to adapt it to screen, it would almost be impossible.
Yeah. I'm not that familiar with the Phoenix, so I don't really... the only thing I know about the Phoenix from the comics is that the Phoenix is an alternate persona that goes bad, or something like that. Like, it starts out good, and then it goes bad somewhere along the line, and it just starts killing everyone.
So really my first exposure to the Phoenix, and again, I was so young that I didn't understand it, was the 90s cartoon. Okay, just to give y'all an idea of how young I was, I don't know when that movie came out, that show came out, but when the Sonic Sat AM came out, I was 4. All right, so yeah, I was young and stupid. I love that we got, like, with the original trilogy, we got to see, like, Logan trying to find out who he is and being the loner, welcomed into the group, and by the third movie, becoming the leader, essentially.
Well, yeah, there are comic storylines technically the de facto leader.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was it was being unfaithful by doing something like that. It was in the comics.
It was just so interesting that, like, he started out not really wanting to be around anyone, and then everyone depending on him. And him kind of stepping into that role, whether it be willingly or unwillingly, or reluctantly, I should say. So that's the interesting part. With my say what you want about X-Men Origins, I thought it was okay. I thought it was like an average summer blockbuster, like from the of the levels of early 2000s. I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was bad, because it's an origin story. It's not Captain Marvel. Let's give it that.
Yeah, and it's certainly not Batman and Robin. It's not Batman and Robin. Too.
With the Wolverine is probably, as much as I love Logan, because it brings it to a close, and it's just in a way we never got to see in that movie. Like, love it or hate it, it was still poetic and beautiful in that sense.
Yeah.
But I think physically at his peak and just performance and confidence wise, Logan the Wolverine was the best. And it was based on a very specific point in the comics too. And I love Japan.
Right, yeah, that's where video games come from, you know?
Yeah!
So,
that's where Nintendo is!
That's where Nintendo and Sony are, too.
Godzilla!
No! But, and anime. Gotta mention that too. But in terms of, you know, how I felt about his ending, I feel like, I mean, with it being Jackman's, you know, final film as the character, I feel like there really was no other way for them to end it than to kill him off.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, you know, if they left him alive at the end, now, you know, is he gonna cure this adamantium poisoning or like this food poisoning? How is this, you know?
How's it going to play out?
How's he gonna get back to normal? You know, stuff like that. But you know,
there's some people out there that are still convinced that, like, no, he's gonna pull a Superman.
He can't come back from the dead. I mean, this isn't the comics where you can pull whatever you want out of your hat and just bring someone back from the dead with it. But it's weird. It's really weird because, I mean, like I was saying with Logan is pretty much a movie that you need to have seen at least a couple of the other ones in order to appreciate just how big of a deal it is. Because it's like with the Avengers. Unless you watch the other films leading up to it, you won't really understand what's going on or who any of these characters are, because they don't waste any time establishing anyone, because they've already had other movies establishing who these guys are.
Yes.
And also, to answer your question if I cried or not, I did. I did, but it was when I got it on DVD, and I was actually watch it and fully appreciate it. You know, without annoying elementary schoolers or non-oriented people screaming behind my back.
I'll tell you what, that movie, it's a gut wrencher, especially if you grew up with the character. Wow.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I don't know how much of this was age and how much of this was makeup or what, because like what's Professor X, what's that guy's name?
Patrick Stewart.
There you go. Patrick Stewart. He looked bad, like old, because he is, but like it's like, oh yeah, like how would he be able to stand in real life? He looks bad, you know?
Yeah, right.
And then a few years later, he does the Picard series on Disney or whatever. So like, well, apparently he can walk. So like, that's wow.
Yeah, I mean, he can walk, but don't expect him to be doing any sprints or push-ups.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know,
it's just like I don't know. Like, it was nice to see him again, but it's like, wow, time has flown.
Yeah.
Because I remember in the first one, he didn't look that bad.
Yeah, I mean, he looked up there, but I mean, he looked like he was getting up there, but he didn't look
healthy.
He didn't look that bad. he looked a lot healthier than he does in the.
And we're not hating on him. I love the dude. It's just time has happened.
Like the guy's an amazing actor. It's just, you know, I mean, time's passed and he's just gotten older as time has gone by. So I mean, you know, can't really blame him for that, you know.
Yeah.
It's fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But
because I first saw him in Star Trek Generations, and because I grew up watching Star Trek because my mom likes Star Trek. I grew up watching Star Wars because I like Star Wars. So it's very interesting to see how the different kind of roles that he went. So when I heard that he was going to play Professor X in the live action movie, I was like, well, who better? What would we have liked to have seen that didn't, or what kind of missed opportunities uh would do we think that they missed out on?
Well, for one thing, they should have had him wear the in at least
No,
one movie.
no. They made a joke about that, and I am so glad they didn't. And I know they're going to try and do that if they ever put him in the NCU. No, Wolverine does not belong in anything other than jeans and a wife beater now.
Well, I mean, I know that they did that one little throw.
You cut out. You cut out.
Well, they did a little throwaway scene. You know, it was a deleted scene from the Wolverine where he goes into a and he finds a box underneath. He finds a box underneath a bed or something. Opens it up and it has the classic Wolverine costume.
Oh yeah, I put that in my AMV. That's right.
In it, and from the moment I saw that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this looks exactly like the costume from the comics."
Yeah,
from the comics.
And the
you know,
cool
images that I've seen online.
It wasn't spandex.
yeah. But
good.
But I mean, at least do like a flashback or something, or like a what if sequence where he has the costume on for like at least one shot with the claws. With the claws, like I'm not saying he should wear the costume the entire film. I'm not saying that. But
I would be okay with one fight scene him wearing it. I would be okay with that.
Like maybe in the danger room or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Although I think
maybe in the original film he wears it in the danger room, and then it gets wrecked really badly, and that's why he decides to wear the jeans and the tank top from then on.
And
because he wants to be more casual.
I love how in the Deadpool teaser
he wants to beat up more people. He wants to beat up people casually.
I love how in the Deadpool teaser, when Deadpool tries to go in the payphone to change into his outfit, and then he comes out and starts eating the guy's ice cream, and he's like, "Gosh," he's talking about like it's such a hassle to like have a secret identity and having to fight it. Lucky Wolverine, he doesn't have to worry about that. He beats up guys in a wife beater.
Phone booth, dude. The heck was a phone booth doing on a street corner? Didn't those things disappear in 98? Hey, nice moves. Zip it, Stanley. that took some courage right there to tell Stan Lee to zip it. Oh, jeez.
That's what I wanted to say about the Captain Marvel movie. Even the Stan Lee cameo was lame.
Yeah.
I was like, how do you do that? That's all we're going to talk about Captain Marvel. I'm sorry, I had to get that out.
Hey, yeah.
Because it was the last one he was in, wasn't it? Before he died. I think.
Yeah, he had filmed several cameos in advance, you know, before he died. So he appeared in both Captain Marvel and in Endgame. But that Endgame, I think, is the last one, though.
Right. That's right.
Which is sad, but you know.
Well, it's fitting since it's titled Endgame.
Yeah, but still.
There was one thing I was gonna say before I get to the two big ones. What was it? I don't remember.